Welcome to Our Last Meal, the podcast on grief, loss, and food. I'm your host, Andrew, and if you've never listened before, every episode I talk with a guest about someone important in their life, someone that they've lost, and what role food played in their relationship. This week I had a chance to talk with one of my favorite musicians, Danielle Anderson, who performs as Danielle Ate the Sandwich. We were able to talk about the silliness that is living and dying, as well as her own experiences of processing grief. This was such an interesting conversation for me and such an honor to speak with Danielle, and I hope you enjoy it as well. Make sure you stay tuned to the very end of the episode as well. There will be a special performance of one of her songs. As always, this podcast does touch on sensitive topics such as death, grief, and loss, so please be mindful as you listen. Hello and welcome to Our Last Meal, the podcast that talks about grief, loss, and food. I'm your host, Andrew, and my guest this week is musician Danielle Anderson, who writes and performs under the name Danielle Ate the Sandwich. In addition to the following that she's garnered through YouTube, she has toured the United States and released 7 albums of original music. Danielle is also personally one of my favorite musicians, and I am so thrilled to have her on the show today. Danielle, welcome.
Hey, Andrew. Thank you for having me. Thanks for that nice intro.
I did my best. The intros are always a little hard to put together because how do you concisely talk about one person in a few sentences? But I gave it my best shot.
I love that you didn't just read my bio verbatim. A lot of people just do that, and it's just like an immediate signal that they don't know anything or care.
Yeah, so I can say I'm an OG fan of yours. I actually, we talked a little bit before the recording that I've been a fan for about 12 or 13 years now.
Cool.
One of the first trips that my wife and I took together was to see you perform in Durham, and actually I still have my toothbrush.
Yes, Danielle Ate the Sandwich's No Cavity Club toothbrushes. Yeah.
Exactly. I am proud to say that I am cavity free as of my last checkup.
Oh, yes. I should start some sort of infomercial circuit with that. I have cavities. I have bad teeth.
Teeth are it's crazy to me that like something that evolutionarily speaking we were evolved to use these for everything, that they are so easily just
They're
broken
fragile.
and messed up. Yeah,
It's
a bad design.
Metaphor. It's a metaphor for us, I think. We're hardy, but we're broken. It's and it all costs a lot of money.
Oh God, we're getting existential right off the bat.
Woo, woo.
Now, see, I think the toothbrush is a great. This is a great marketing tactic, but I think you need to branch into other things too. So you got the No Cavity Club. You could also have Danielle Ate the Sandwich plate, so you could have the Clean Plate Club. I think there's an option there.
Cute. Yes, I love that. That's a really good idea. I've had foam fingers. I've had wall clocks. I've had a jewelry line, like little hearts that said, "I'm saving myself for Danielle Ate the Sandwich." I've had air fresheners and socks, but I've never had plates, Andrew. And I think now's the time. Who doesn't want to carry around plates to shows?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I got her to sign my plate. Can you believe it?
I got her to sign my plate. Yeah.
That's,
I'm never washing this baby.
Which is terrible because I'm going to use it. I will eat food off of it, but I will not wash it.
Yeah, good. I want to cause infection. I want people to get sick. Yeah.
And it will then screw up their teeth, and so it goes full circle. They have to grab the toothbrush.
Mm-hmm,
I think we just solved it.
Conspicuous consumption or something. Yeah.
Something like that. I've got to ask the question. So you said you had the air freshener. What scent did you go with?
Well, first off, I went with vanilla. Second off, I went with strawberry.
Okay.
And I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but there's only fruity, pleasant scents. Like where I got them printed, there wasn't an option to have like deli meat or garlic. I flirted with Olive Garden on Twitter. This is just like a little backstory, humble brag. I flirted with Olive Garden on Twitter, and they reached out to me and were like, "We want to send you a fan package." Like Olive Garden fam is their hashtag. So they sent me a goodie basket, and there was a breadstick air freshener that smelled like garlic. And it was brilliant. It was brilliant. But I don't know. I don't have the same printers as Olive Garden.
Oh man.
So it was like, I don't know how I can get a garlic scented air freshener. And I mean, who wants that? It's funny for the joke. But is anybody going to use it? I don't know.
I hate to say this. I might be the target audience for that.
Your
if you told
garlic
me that I
fish.
could just smell garlic on a regular basis, I
Just
can't
keep it
lie
in
to you.
my wallet for good luck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just break. Andrew, why are you sniffing your wallet? No, it's just got a Olive Garden garlic air freshener in there. Just
I just need a kick. I just
yeah,
need a pick me up. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Well,
that
all
3 o'clock
right.
feeling. You know,
You're convincing me that this is what needs to happen.
I that just makes me think, like, if I ever get to the point with this where I'm having to put together merch, I want to go the zany route. I don't want to go with the because everyone's got a T-shirt or a sticker or a
Mhm.
button, and those are all fun. I want to get crazy with it.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is yet, but I want to get crazy with it.
Yeah. There's a lot of good stuff out there. Um, and, I think the biggest thing for me is probably music. But nobody buys music like on a thing anymore. Everybody's just buying streaming music and downloading it. So it's funny that I'm a musician. A lot of musicians are doing this. Our purpose is to make music, but we have to come up with this creative merch
Yeah,
to be able to sell merch and like entice people to come over to the table and sort of brand ourselves. So yeah, I've been through a lot of stuff. I love it. I love thinking up like weird zany merch items and and working on my brand and putting my name on stuff and printing hot dogs and pizza and sandwiches on things. It's really fun. I think a lot of musicians and artists don't love the business side of things like that, but I really get into it. Maybe too much.
well, but so I think there is a creative part of it though, right? Because the idea of coming up with new merch, you talk about, oh, I'm going to put hot dogs and sandwiches and things like print that on different items. You still have the creative aspect of okay, what is that thing that's going to stick out to people? Because I assume that there's a part of it that you want something it's people it's going to stand out that like oh again 12 years later I've still got a toothbrush that has like Danielle like the sandwich no cavity club.
Yeah.
It was just so out there I had to get it.
Yeah, exactly. It's impulse buying. It's a little bit manipulative, Andrew, where I'm just like, how do I get these people to give me $4? I'm going to print my name on something weird. But it is fun and it is for the memory of like I got to see you in Durham when I got this wacky toothbrush and I think it helps people remember your music more if you have
Yeah.
memorable anything. Memorable live shows, memorable music videos, memorable merch. It's all just part of yeah, the experience of being an artist. And I definitely think of it as an extension of my creativity. So it's very fun to
Yeah.
explore.
Well, and that makes sense because I think you really touched on something there. Memory is really it's interesting. I mean, that's even the idea of this podcast comes down to memories of food with people. I in the very first episode of this, I talk about food that I would eat at my grandparents' house as a kid, and it was nothing crazy or like really what would be I guess objectively good, but little Debbie donut sticks still have a place in my heart.
Mm,
It's
yeah,
so I mean, memory is a powerful thing.
absolutely. Yeah, memory and food are both powerful things.
Yeah. Um, I was gonna say too, talking about just how people connect with the music. The other day, my daughter, I have a 5-year-old daughter who's about to turn 6, and so preparing for this, I was like, well, I'm gonna listen to some music while I make dinner. And she kind of came out of the living room while I was listening to some of your music, and she climbed up on the bar. And before we started recording, we talked about you playing children's shows. I got to tell you, she was having a good time trying to sing along and dancing to it. So you've got
Cute.
at least one more new fan.
Yes. Yeah, I think the sound of my music, like the melodies, and I play the ukulele, so it does come off as kind of fun and sweet. And yeah, I've played a fair amount of outdoor shows, or I actually just worked with high school kids this morning, but have played some shows for younger kids or like assemblies at elementary schools. So I can get along and hang with kids really well. It's just that issue of like, is the message going over their head enough for it to be appropriate? And I
Yeah.
think usually it is. Like Pixar movies have jokes for the parents and jokes for the kids, and so I have a little bit of that too. I say wiener schnitzel in one of my songs and everybody laughs. So I do like to play around and have fun and like make it accessible to everybody, which isn't like my intent when I set out to write or be an artist, but it's really lucky that the music I make and the things I do can attract a wide audience, because I have a lot of older fans too.
Yeah.
Through the ukulele community, retirees love my music, and then I think younger people do too. I get a lot of comments, and then middle too, because I get a lot of comments of like, "Oh my gosh, I used to listen to you all the time in college," and like, you know, I get that too because I was in college when I started making stuff. So uh, it's fun. It's fun to
Yeah.
have a little bit of everybody. So thank you to your daughter. I will now make a kids album called "You're Gonna Die, Sweetie." No, just kidding. That's
Well,
me.
no, I
That's
think that's
me.
fine. You just in parentheses, but hopefully not for a long, long time.
But hopefully not for long. Yeah,
You
yeah,
gotta you
yeah.
gotta bring it around. I love though that you've got the retiree community pretty much locked down. I
Oh
think that's
yeah.
a great market. Because people are constantly coming into that community. Maybe not
Yes. They
staying as
got
long as they would
time.
hope. Yeah,
They got time. They got money to spend. I think they also want to have a little fun, and I offer that safe amount of fun where we're not going to get too crazy, but they can, laugh or be like, I saw this young woman play music. She was a riot. You know how
it'll be
old
fun.
people talk like that.
I it is great though that I think most people when they go for the old person accents, like I'm gonna get mid Atlantic, early 1900s. It just feels like that's the right accent for them.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
all the old people in my life, they sound very very southern, like
Oh
and
yeah.
painfully so.
My dad was not Southern, but when I do his voice, I kind of do a Southern voice. And my grandma was not British, but sometimes I end up doing a British voice, like "Hello, oh, hey." That's my grandma's voice, and then my dad is like, "Well, I don't know what you doing, you Yahoo." So it's funny. I don't. They don't have those dialects at all, but that's how I reenact them when I speak of them.
Well, in all fairness, though, you claim to be a musician, not an impersonator. So I think you get a pass on that
True.
one, right?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Do
First
you also
pass of the
make
day.
do you also get to make up phrases for them? So you said Yahoo. Is that a phrase that was actually used? Or is that one that you just attribute?
No, that is something my dad would say. He'd be like, "Quit acting like a Yahoo," or like, "Oh, those Yahoos are coming in from California," or like California and Texas are the enemy state to a lot of like smaller, like they come in to live in your town. Um, Not even like an immigrant thing. I'm making it sound like that, but it's just like anyone with a California license plate. It's like, oh, those Yahoos are mucking up the campsite, and
Yeah.
uh, and my grandma would say, "Oh Lordy B." Oh Lordy B. And she also I'm not sure if you've heard of the restaurant Ruby Tuesday. It's like a sort of an Applebee's, Chili's buffet franchise.
I
She
love Ruby Tuesday.
Yeah, yeah. She loved it too, and she'd call it Ruby Tuesday. Ruby
I
Tuesday.
I don't know what it says about me. That's my go to. Anytime we've gone, I've told my wife Natalie that you want to go to Ruby Tuesdays. I immediately go straight there, and I don't say
You
it like
say
I'm not
it.
Ruby Tuesdays. It's not
Ruby Tuesday.
yeah, and it's not like, oh, this is how I actually say it. I just default to, I guess, silliness is, I don't know, it's not a defense mechanism always, but sometimes it's just like a default setting. Um but I will say about Ruby Tuesdays, they've got those dark croutons. I don't know, I forget what type of bread they are.
Mm. Is it
Absolutely the
rye?
most incredible croutons. I don't think it's rye. I think it's like a pumpernickel.
Okay.
Yeah,
Dang.
and yeah, they are just absolutely wonderful, and I would eat a pound of them if it were socially acceptable to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's make it a law. Let's make it socially acceptable.
Like there are
There's a
certain things that,
lot worth fighting for right now, and I think
yeah,
it should be that.
eating croutons. I'm very much in the category of, we're cat owners, and I feel like it should be more socially acceptable to take your cat in public. Like dogs are fine, but I can't walk around with a cat in a backpack.
No, yeah. Yeah, it has to be a big deal. Like you have to be the weirdo at the airport with like the bubble clear encasement. Have you seen those for cats?
Yeah,
But then it's like you're drawing a lot of attention to yourself, which maybe you want. But if you also just want to be strolling, you're just traveling with your cat. It's not a big deal. But it's a big deal if you have a cat out in public.
it's
Speaking of death, I've been having a lot of dreams about our family cat who died a few years ago. And I don't know if that means anything. Where he's been like in my dreams. His name was Sheriff. He was orange. And just last night I had a dream where he was like chained to a wall like he was like leashed up and chained to a wall, and
Yeah.
then like a tiger escaped somewhere else and was gonna chase after me and Sheriff the cat, and I like grabbed him and ripped the chain out of the wall and ran with it. And then the other night I had a dream that we had mice in our house and that Sheriff was like catching the mice and doing like a bad job, but I was like, Sheriff, take care of the mice. Are you open to interpreting my dreams on this podcast, Andrew?
I am not a professional dream interpreter, but I'm also not a professional grief discusser, and that has not stopped me from doing that. So,
Yeah.
in my humble opinion, I think what this means is that you need to get another orange cat. I think that's what you're
Aw.
being told. Um,
Uh-oh. Okay. I am taking that as professional advice and it's gonna happen. Yeah.
I I think having a cat around is great because a cat's a great way to keep yourself humble. If you're ever feeling too
Mm.
good, you realize, okay, I've got an animal that is screaming at me for dinner, but it's not the right kind of dinner. So, cats are great for that.
Yeah,
Um,
keep you humble. Definitely.
now,
Yeah.
how long ago was it that you lost Sheriff though?
Sheriff was lost in 2019, I
Mm,
believe. I had a I had a weird succession of death. My grandma died in the summer of 2018. Sheriff died in the summer of 2019. And then my dad passed in the winter of 2019. But before my dad passed, I started writing this song called Cats and Grandmas. And it was like, cats and
yeah.
grandmas die the same way. Your mom gives you a phone call early in the morning. And it's just that same sort of news, like you get the phone call and you're like, why is someone calling me? Whatever, mom. And you let it go to voicemail and then you like hear her weepy voice and you're like, no, something's the matter. And so
Ah,
this song hasn't been like fully developed or realized, but just picking up on those patterns of like how and when death comes to us, and a pet can feel just as significant as a person sometimes.
yeah. I'm so sorry to
Sometimes
hear that
it's
you had so much loss just that close together.
oh yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for that.
It's yeah, the I'll say this about the pet thing. Like I think more people than not get it, but there are still I think people that don't understand. Like losing a pet can be such a hard experience. I mean, you know, our older cat now, Pork Chop, is 8, and
Hmm.
we've had Pork Chop since she was a kitten, and she was our first living thing that the two of us took on together to say we're going to keep this thing alive and throw all of our love on it. So she's that first fur baby. You know, but just animals, they mean so much. I mean, and I like how you kind of see the parallels between how losing a pet can bring up the same kind of emotion as losing a family member.
Yeah, totally. And sometimes it's easier to grieve a pet because it's just they're furry and soft and they don't talk back. So there's like a
Yeah,
simplicity in grieving a relationship that wasn't difficult or layered or convoluted. It's like that cat was just nice.
yeah,
And sometimes with people it can be more difficult.
yeah. There can be extra layers with people, but yeah, typically with a pet, it's I gave them belly rubs, I gave them food, they hung out with me. I mean, we had a pretty simple understanding, but it's I don't know. It's that's one of the weird things about being a human, I guess, is that we do have these really weird connections with people, and you basically have to spend your entire life trying to figure that out and figure out what the hell that means.
Yeah. Even after they're gone too.
And it feels like that makes it even harder because then it's a one sided conversation that you're trying to have, and how do you do that?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
rhetorical. You don't have to answer that. I
I'm like, well, here's what I think. Yeah. I think the rhetorical or like the unanswered conversation can be frustrating of like, "Oh,
yeah
I would ask you this if you were still here," or "I would call you today and tell you about this, but I can't cuz you're gone." So it's frustrating because you can't ever get that answer, but it also feels still open in a way that
yeah
feels sort of sweet to me, or I'm grateful for that, like the conversation is open. Um I feel that more with my dad than my grandma. Like my grandma passed and we
mhm,
were really close and I would actually visit her when I was touring. She lived in Nebraska, so it was a great like middle country stop when I was a touring
yeah
musician going all over the country. And And so I saw her a lot more than I saw my dad, actually. But I feel more moments where I'm like, oh, my dad would get a kick out of this, or oh, I should call my dad, like check in with my dad. And then it's like, oh yeah, he's gone, huh? And so it's funny the way things pop up, and the relationship evolves even after they're gone, or like even just remembering that there's this big difference of them not being there, and
Yeah.
like how you sort of cycle through that on a daily basis.
Yeah. When it feels like too the relationship does kind of evolve because I think as a person, as we get older, we I don't know if learn more is the right way to phrase it, but we experience more. And I think I would hope for any person that, who you are now versus who you are in 5 years is not the same person. I would hope that for everyone because I mean that it's a sign of growth, right? And so I think that as you get older, you can appreciate people on a much deeper level than you could when you were younger. It is not always easy though. That's the thing. But I think there's an appreciation or at least an understanding of, even it could be something incredibly simple. I for my grandfather, I remember growing up, he always just that one of his things was just always, make sure you're saving, make sure you're, taking care of all your bills, make sure you work hard, all this good stuff. And I was a kid, I realized, okay, this is a good thing to do. But as I get older now and I think about making sure that I try to have something for my daughter that, one day that she doesn't have to struggle, I can understand where he's coming from. I can understand because I've learned more about him and his early life now that he's passed, about how he at just as a at 13 years old, I think he left home and he basically just started off on his own and he made it. So I think I see that he struggled in a way I never could have understood, and I certainly couldn't understand when I wasn't a parent. And so I'm rambling, but it's I think there is a way to appreciate more.
Absolutely, those lessons become more relevant as you
Yeah,
grow up and like understand where they're coming from. I even think death becomes more relevant at like as I get older. My grandpa died when I was maybe 20, 23.
yeah,
I forget how old I was. I was in college, so I was a grown up, but I still wasn't that self-actualized yet. And he was really close to us when we were kids, but I wasn't grown up enough to know him as like an adult person where we were like coming at each other with any sort of equality. He was always grandpa to me, and he had
yeah,
Alzheimer's for the last few years of his life, so he was also sort of gone. So when he died, it was very sad because it was the first like relative who I knew really well who had passed. And then my grandma passed just a few years ago when I was like 33. So I was much more grown up and had been through more things, and I knew her so well. And it was super powerful, but also I think she was ready. So in a way we were
yeah,
ready. And so there's like some strange relief in that when an older person who's like ready to die gets to die. And she was a very religious woman. So as far as I know, she's partying in heaven with JC and God. And then when my dad and then I think when my dad died, I had that experience of my grandma. So I felt a little more equipped
yeah,
to just like sort of know what I might feel and how complicated it can get and how it can be sad and frustrating and nerve-wracking and grief stricken and lovely and like nostalgic and all these things that can accompany it. And I think it's weird. It's sad that all these people have gone, but the way it happened, I feel like I learned how to be better at accepting death and grieving from my grandma dying and then my dad. And it's still so interesting. And I was writing songs about death. I started writing folk music when I was a kid, but I really have this like concentrated volume of work in that 20 to 30-year-old range of my life before these really important people had died.
yeah,
So it was something that I've always been singing about and something I've always been interested in. And because it's like something that we all know happens, but we never talk about it. And it's like taboo and mysterious. And I think it's fascinating. So yeah, I'm also like, I feel like I'm growing up as people around me die, which makes sense. That's kind of heartbreaking that like the pieces of you start to like get chipped off and then you have to like be grown up. But
Eh,
it's an observation.
no, you're right though. I mean, because it is part of growing up, but it's such a horrible part of growing up. But you touched on a lot of things there. So you talk about all these feelings that come up, feelings of like nostalgia, and it's weird to me when someone passes how much laughter you can have during that time, just because I think you go to a space of nostalgia and you naturally are going to think about old times. I mean, so there's for us, I know there was a lot of tears, there was a lot of laughter, there was a lot of just pause, I guess. But I think all that's really interesting, and it's also really interesting to me that you were already interested in, fascinated by this, and so when in your 20s when you were writing this music that had these themes, was this was this a result of like a morbid curiosity? Was it more of a you knew it was going to happen at some point, and you just I mean, what do you think really drove that
I think
writing?
I think it was a morbid curiosity. I think it was my religious upbringing because there's all this talk about life after death and heaven, and I was exploring, what I believe now, which is I don't know. And so it was
Yeah,
like everybody says all this stuff for sure, but like how do they know? So I was exploring just like another option. And also I just remember seeing a show called I Survived Beyond and Back. I think also my grandpa's death was one that got me thinking, and watching how people reacted, and my grandma, like I remember at his funeral, like I broke down in tears when I saw my grandma at my grandpa's funeral, and she said, "Oh,
yeah,
don't cry. He finally got his crown." As in, like the translation of that in Christian is he finally got his crown in the kingdom of heaven. And I was like, she's she's okay with it. She's okay because she believes wholeheartedly that he's okay. And it was beautiful and also confusing to me. And
yeah,
so anyway, I remember seeing this show called I Survived Beyond and Back about people who had died and come back to life, and they tell their story and what they saw. And there's also like ghost stories have always intrigued me. So like I was watching these shows that were just like centered around almost dying but coming back, and it was like, what is up with that? And yeah, talking about something that people don't talk about that is such a big mystery is
yeah.
always something I like to explore through songwriting or just conversation with friends. But I think those were some of the big things. And yeah, I don't think of it as like morbid. I think it's perceived as creepy, but to me it just feels like good planning. I don't know.
No, I get that. And I wasn't trying to imply creepy when I said morbid. But I know what you mean though. It is kind of a taboo topic. I mean, it's the one thing outside of being born. It's the one thing that literally everyone is guaranteed to do.
Yeah,
Um, everyone is guaranteed to do, but it's also the one thing that nobody wants to talk about. And I
yeah,
understand it. That was I this podcast was a result of me grieving and trying to find the way that made sense for me to grieve. Um, at the same time though, it is a chance to have conversations with people because I know we don't really talk about death. Whenever if you have a friend or if you had a coworker that told you that somebody passed away, maybe not you. You seem a little more introspective, but I think most people, if somebody told them that, there is just a kind of a gut reaction of, that's uncomfortable, and I'm sorry to hear that, and let me know
but
if you
what
need
else do I
anything.
say? Yeah,
Exactly. We don't really take time to ask people, tell me about the person, and that's why I wanted to do this podcast is because I want people to have a chance to honor those loved ones. There were people that you cared about, and take time to talk about them. So
absolutely.
that's why I wanted to do this, and it's been really interesting so far, and just giving people that chance to do that is, I think it's really important. I would hope that more people would try to do that because I don't think it makes the process necessarily easier, but I think you can find a little more peace in it.
Definitely. And it comes to be that you're thinking about them often. So to have somebody who willingly wants you to share about it or have a conversation where you can kind of talk about your memories and the things you've been mulling over in your head, it's a nice just camaraderie to be like, yeah, we've both been through this. Let's talk about it. And
Yeah.
something I remember when my grandma died is the response from people made me feel like I should be feeling something different than I was feeling, if that makes sense. It's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss." And that is great. That's nice, but there was more. Like there was so much more I wanted to talk about or like be asked or like I felt bad if I was not just saying like, "Thank you." Like I wanted to be like, "It was so bizarre. Like we were in the room with her when she passed and like the doctors did this and it took this long for her to go and like and then the pastor came and they said the prayer and then da, 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 and then and there was just like I felt like a little kid whose like parents just came home from a night of being babysat and I had like everything to tell everybody, but it didn't feel appropriate. And I mean, that's like you have your podcast, I have my songs where I just have to like write these ideas into something so that I don't explode. And like all these beautiful little details and moments that like for me religion, I was raised religious and my grandma's dying was religious and my grandma's
Yeah.
funeral was religious, so there's this nostalgia that comes through the grief. And I mean we're here to talk about food too. Like can I go ahead and break into some food discussion?
I'm never going to be upset about food discussion, so please,
Okay.
by all means.
So I went to a lot of funerals of family members in Nebraska when I was younger, you know, an aunt or a great aunt or a cousin or people who I knew as family members but didn't know super well. And there's always a reception after at the church, usually put on by the Lutheran ladies, which is like a society of women who dedicate their time to help these families who are grieving and make the food. And
That's
in
beautiful.
Nebraska, it's always these sandwiches where they're nothing fancy. There's like a ham one and an egg salad one, and they're just like so lunchboxy, and they taste really good. They're like delicious in their simplicity. And then there's like potato salad, and so I had seen this food so many times before in my youth, and then when it was my grandma's turn, and I saw the sandwiches and they're just like stacked, you know, there's like it feels like hundreds of them on a plate. It's just like
Yeah.
a feast for your eyes. And it was like, oh my gosh, the sandwiches, like it felt like a rite of passage. Like this is how we honor the dead. We make the Lutheran ladies make the sandwiches, we fill our plates, we sit sort of quietly hushed but also catching up with people on these long conference tables in the banquet hall of or the reception hall of the church. And it was just strange to be back there. And because I was the granddaughter, I felt like a little bit more the center of attention. You know, I was
Yeah.
like one of the ones receiving the major condolences. So it was weird. It felt like the spotlight was on me, which made me a little nervous and shy. Um, but yeah, the food at the receptions is such a nostalgia bringer for me. Um,
So I was gonna, yeah, I was gonna ask. I mean, like, whenever we, pre the recording, I saw the Lutheran ladies, I saw the sandwiches, and it to me that's very much that's in line with that idea of it doesn't have to be something fancy. It doesn't have to be and this is where I'm going to blank on any type of fancy oysters Rockefeller. It doesn't have to be that, right? It doesn't
uh-huh.
that simple, kind of comfort food can really play a part there. I mean, so whenever when you're eating this food and it really is honoring your grandmother because it's that chance to, to be there solely for the purpose of, paying respects to her. Does that trigger nostalgia for you for other family members? Does it offer this some level of comfort, or is that something you go back to now? Do you try to recreate that ham sandwich now?
I haven't tried to recreate it. But that's an amazing idea. I'm not a great cook, but my grandma also made these amazing donuts. They're just like fried dough donuts. And I think she didn't have like a fancy donut maker, some kind of fryer.
Yeah.
And then this simple syrup with just like powdered sugar and water, but it was just this nice glaze. And she made them like magic. Like I don't even remember seeing her make them, but they were always made when we got up in the morning. And that would be something that I like would be interested in trying to recreate. And if I had one, I would probably just melt. She also made these candy cane cookies that are like red food cookie dough,
Yeah.
and then they're just the dough color, and you twist them and make them a candy cane, and it's kind of just a sugar cookie, I think. And my mom tries to make them, and my mom does a good job, but it never tastes quite the same as my grandma's. And so I can see my mom trying to recreate some of those things a little bit more than I can. My dad died in the winter of 2019, and then COVID happened. I'm not sure if you've heard
Yeah.
of it. And so we actually
Briefly.
didn't. You've I think you've heard it mentioned once or twice. We didn't actually get to have any sort of service for him until
Oh
just this
no.
May. So we went 2 years without gathering to celebrate his life until this May. And then unfortunately and very sadly, my uncle, his brother, also passed away the same week we were going to Nebraska to honor my dad's life. And so we stayed for my uncle's funeral. So it was like um funeral
Overload.
week overload. Yeah. And at his my uncle Dale's reception, they had a bowl of what I'm going to call taco salad, but it's not like taco salad you'd order at a restaurant. And I had forgotten about it because I didn't spend a lot of time with my dad's side of the family. But I saw it and I was like, this. So it's basically like a salad, but you also put crunched up chips, tortilla chips, and
Yeah.
beans in it, and then like mix it all together. So it's just sort of a smushy salad that resembles the ingredients of a taco, and it was so good. And you put ground beef in it, and I hadn't had it since I was a kid, and I saw it, and I just like remembered this dish. And then I scooped a bunch on, and they didn't have they didn't have sandwiches at that one. So these are like different regions of Nebraska and different
Yeah.
family lines, so there might be something to that. But this they had like brisket, like they had like
Oh Lord.
some good stuff. And like, I'm not sure how you guys do it in the South. We just have like salad, but it's like potato salad and macaroni salad and jello salad. So there was like 18 bowls of these different salads, and then some brisket, and then cookies up the wazoo. So many cookies. Where do you get all these cookies?
I'm gonna say, like, food wise, it sounds like a pretty good setup. Um, but I think, you got to have cookies. Like when people are grieving, they need sugar. You
I
need to
need
have that
cookies.
there. But you ask in the South. I mean, in the South, it is very much. If I go to a family gathering, there will be multiple salads. None of them will have anything green in them, and
Yeah.
I'm prepared for that. You know,
Yeah.
I it's even something now. So if I make, I'm gonna make pasta salad. There's there's nothing green in there. I try to add an extra vegetable so that it at least somewhat resembles something of a salad, but
Uh-huh.
I've never understood that. I've never
Yeah.
understood that.
There
I
should be
think
another name, like not salad, because salad is lettuce, but like yeah, for these concoctions. I guess salad maybe just implies lots of things in one bowl.
yeah, just mixed
If you
together.
think of it that way, it works.
I just
Yeah,
I like the fact that you can say, well, I only had a salad for lunch. But the salad was
right.
like, giant bowl of pasta salad or potato salad.
Uh-huh. Oh
Probably not
man, I
happening.
love pasta salad.
I
I love
Same.
the salads. I don't even need the entree. I just need like yeah, like pasta salad, macaroni salad, potato salad's good. I love a slaw. We do coleslaw too over in Nebraska. I'm sure you guys
Now,
do it better than us, but
well, so I don't know. So do you do a red or a white?
usually white.
Okay. See, I'm not a fan of mayonnaise based things. Typically, I'm not a mayonnaise person. Um, I like a vinegar slaw. Okay. My wife, so her mother is from Nicaragua, but she makes something called repollo, which is really just shredded cabbage with white vinegar, some green pepper, onion, salt, pepper, and lime juice.
Yum.
It is out of this world. It is out of
Wow.
this world. But she also makes a wonderful pasta salad too. And I found that the
Sounds
trick
good.
with the pasta salad is it's all about, getting the balance of the flavors right. So what we'll typically do is the dressing, but then also some red wine vinegar, so you get a little bit of tang to it.
That sounds really good.
It's a difference maker.
Yeah. This makes me want to start cooking.
Well,
I just
and
don't cook. You just can't get that at the Whole Foods cold buffet line, can you?
I love that. I will say this. So trying to recreate some of those dishes, though, I've tried to do that before. My grandmother, one of her favorite things or one of my favorite things that she made growing up was fried cornbread. And
Mm,
she's got early stages of dementia now. She has health issues, so she can't get in and cook anymore.
mm,
But that fried cornbread, one of my favorite things that she ever made, and I've tried to make it. And you said something that your mom does a pretty good job with the cookies, but it's just not quite there.
yeah.
You can't recreate a grandmother's cooking. You can come close. There's something that they put extra in there though.
Yeah, grandma magic.
I think they call it love, but it's
Yeah,
something. If
love.
they could bottle it.
They could bottle it. I'd buy it at Macy's.
Yeah.
Another funny thing that happened with my grandma. Well, like I said before, I spent a lot of time with my grandma visiting on these trips I would take as I was touring, and we'd
Yeah.
usually go out to dinner. She loved Applebee's riblets basket. So we go to Applebee's. She loved Applebee's, and she would always get the riblets. And as she got older, it became pretty difficult for her to like. I think they're difficult to eat even if you're like young and spry with all the
Yeah.
dexterity in the world. But it started to get a little gross. And eventually she moved to a nursing home, and it was just kind of too hard to get her out or into the car, and it was just
Yeah.
a little too much. So we would sometimes bring food in, and then they also offered a, like lunch and meals at the nursing home, so we would eat there. But that was her town, Grand Island, Nebraska. Just has every restaurant in under the sun, like, and just every time you go back, there's 3 new restaurants. And so there were always a lot of places to go out. But we mostly did Applebee's and Perkins, which is kind of like an IHOP, Denny's, a Village Inn. It's Perkins. I don't know where regionally it sinks. Maybe just in the Nebraska, Colorado region.
I've never heard of that
Um,
one.
yeah, yeah. And so my grandma could get down on some food, and she was a good cook even though she wouldn't have said she was, and she never admitted to liking cooking, but she was a great cook. And when she was in the hospital dying, I was like, what's a more positive way to just say she was, but the truth is, folks, she was
Yeah.
dying. So she was hospitalized for a few days, and she was on an oxygen machine and to help her breathe, and it was essentially kind of keeping her alive, like, and
Mhm.
they were giving her enough oxygen that it was kind of animating her. So we thought she was getting really bad, so they turned up the oxygen, and then she was in great spirits that day. So we were like, oh, she's healed, she's come back to life,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. And we were all there, and we were singing songs, and everyone was saying goodbye to, like, saying hello or goodbye to her just to check on her. Not sure they came to say goodbye, but they were like, oh, she's doing great. And
Yeah.
then someone said, well, since you're feeling better, what would you like to eat? And she, without hesitation, said, I want a Reuben. And it was so fast and so loud and such a command. And as far as we know, she never really ate Reubens. Like, what, it wasn't, we didn't know it to be one of her favorite meals. And it was just really funny and a surprise. And she wasn't in good enough spirits to hog down a Reuben, so I think we
Yeah.
got her something soft. But it was just kind of funny, even like thinking of the person who we've lost, like their appetite to be like,
Yeah.
I'm feeling good, I want my last meal to be a Reuben, damn it. And so that was just a funny thing, and it's an inside joke with my family now of like, I want a Reuben.
So let me ask you. So you just said something there. So it's an inside joke with a family now. Is that? I know that's a let's call it what it is. It was a dark time. It was not fun. You said that you were trying to think of a more positive word to say dying, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
When you get the phone call, that's you go there and they're dying, and I'm bumming this out. I'm sorry, but I remember that with my grandfather too. It's what it is. But you get to joke around, and like you even had an inside joke for your family that came out during that time. So when you bring that up now, is it kind of a has it softened a bit to where it's more of a memory of like, you laugh, you talk about her and just appreciate her? Is it gotten to that point now?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, like my grandma was 86. She was tired and ready to join Jesus. So like
Yeah.
it in a way it was really happy. I was happy for her, and it was sad, and I fell even more in love with her when she died. And again,
Yeah.
because it's kind of like more simple. Um, when it's just like, oh, my sweet little grandma, and she had soft hands, and she was funny, and she was kind of mad, um, and like now she's perfect. Do you know what I mean? Even though
Yeah.
there were moments that were not perfect, especially as I tried to discover what I believed in religiously or
Yeah.
spiritually. So that there were some issues that were off the table, but yeah, I think now we laugh and we talk about her. When I think about her, I think about, I have lots of things of hers, like furniture and just little tchotchkes and paintings. She did paintings, and so I have
Really?
like just things of her in my house, and they fill my life. They're just stuff, but they really fill my life, and they're my most prized possessions, like a dresser and a bar cabinet, and this cardinal painting that she did, um and so she's with me all the time, and even when I'm like thinking again about religion or feeling nostalgic about childhood and how I grew up and the things I was taught, she's like ever present in my mind and heart, without a doubt.
That's beautiful though. Especially the idea that you had, furniture that presumably she had decades to kind of this to imprint love on, and just her, who she is onto it. The fact that you've got a painting, something that she made, you have something tangible and physical in your home
Oh
that
my
it
gosh.
started as a thought in her head that is now a physical thing that you can look at, and it is that idea of, okay, that's my grandmother, and that's beautiful. And you're right, when you lose somebody there, when it's expected like that, I think it's really hard to see the decline. But I mean, there is a comfort in, okay, there is peace, there is no more pain, but they do get to still live in you. And it sounds like you've kind of gotten to that place where they get to live in you as the version that, I guess it's not that you want to remember necessarily, but the one that you choose to.
Yeah,
You get to remember all the positives and the sweetness, and you get to remember the parts that were funny and kind, and that gets to be the memory whenever you think about her.
definitely. And I think that's lucky, because I think a lot of relationships can be twisty and have darkness,
Yeah.
for certain family members, it's not the same, and it is sort of like a choice I'm making to like remember the good stuff and celebrate that, and I feel lucky that I get to do that with whatever memories I have left, or whatever sort of reasoning it takes inside of you to just be happy and grateful for them, instead of frustrated or unresolved. I feel like I got the
Yeah.
closure I needed, and so uh this is this is a podcast, but I just want to show you, Andrew. I had these
Please.
buttons made of my grandma.
That's amazing.
So she got a diagnosis from the doctor that she was losing her eyesight, so she started wearing like blocked out sunglasses, blue blockers,
Yeah.
and I think she got better and actually had some sight. It definitely went away, but she wore them all the time. She wasn't completely blind. So I'm not even sure what else she could see. I think she did it as a little secret weapon so she could be watching. Um but I had these pins made of her face, which she would hate. She wasn't like a look at me person, so she would totally hate that. And then I actually I'm a singer and a songwriter, and I also do some comedy, and I created this character for Halloween one year called Future Grandma, who's just a grandma in a spacesuit, essentially. And then I actually did like a set with her where I played music and, told some jokes as this grandma from the future who's like recollecting on the past. Like they just
Which,
don't write songs like they used to, but it's all of our trashy 2002, like the aughts pop hits. But she's absolutely the inspiration. And like when I see myself as that character, I'm like, oh my gosh, I look like my grandma. Yay. So, she's fluid and she's in every song I write pretty much. Oh, it's almost despicable like how much I write about her. I can't stop. And within that there's death, there's
yeah,
family, there's who my mother is to me and who she was to my mother. There's family, there's religion. So, like, grandma to me is a source of so much, not just a family member. There's like a stream of things that come from an elder family member, I think.
yeah.
I'm not
I
sure if
guess
you felt that about your grandpa.
I did. He was very much the patriarch. He was also just an incredibly kind person. He So I told you that I learned more about him after he passed than I'd known about him before he passed. I always knew that he worked hard. He was in his 80s when he passed. He didn't retire until his like mid to late 70s. He was very much a self-made man. He owned the heating and air business. He worked hard for decades. And so that was kind of the idea I had of him growing up was that, okay, my grandfather, he works hard, that's what he does. He's funny though, he makes a lot of jokes. He used to like to pick on any cousin of mine or myself. If we brought a girl home, he would always have, visit the family. This is somebody we might settle down with. It was never mean spirited, but he always had to kind of pick just to kind of gauge. I remember my cousin's
Mm-hmm.
wife, whenever they were dating him, looking at her and saying, do her eyes look like they're too close together? And I was maybe 18, and so I'm immediately horrified because I'm like, this is so mean. And she just laughed and took it in stride. And then he kept picking. He was I he was a silly man, and I think that I get a lot of that from him myself because I
Yes. Yeah.
by nature I'm not too serious. It's because it is this idea that life is too short and it's too much negative. There's too much nonsense out there to be serious all the time. I,
Agree.
I remember driving with him whenever we were younger. If he was driving his truck and we were in there with him, he would always drive perched up on the wheel, and he would look around constantly. He would maybe scan the road ahead of him sometimes, but he was mostly looking around, pointing out houses that I've done heating and air on that house, or I helped build that house, or I might come back and buy that house because he did real estate. He would always veer off the road just a little bit, jerk the truck back onto the road, look at us and tell us with a straight face, "Keep your side on the road, please." And it was just hilarious to me.
Yeah.
Um, but I found out after he passed, one of the things that kept coming up during his eulogy and during his service was that how charitable he was, how
Mm.
there were times that he would just come and anonymously drop off groceries at the house of somebody who'd lost their job right before Christmas. Was one of the stories I heard. He never talked about this. It was one of those things that it wasn't something that came up regularly. He just something that he did because he knew what it was like to have, six kids and a lot of pressure to provide. He knew what it was like to struggle, and he was just a kind man,
That's
and
awesome.
yeah, and I get to think about that. Like whenever I think back on him now, I get to think about just the kindness, the silliness, and there are times like it's a year, it's been a year and a half, but there's still times that I do tear up a bit thinking about him. But there are times that I just think about something that he would have said or he would have done, or that I'm quoting him, and it just makes me laugh. And then my daughter, she got to meet him too, so there are times that she'll ask me if I remember Papa Justice, and I get to say yeah, and she'll remind me of the time that we went there and she got to play with him and my grandmother and play their piano, and you know it's fun to get to hear her reminisce too.
Yeah. I'm glad they got to meet.
Yeah, that's honestly one of my favorite pictures in the world is one of the three of them together, and
Oh,
that's
I
one of those
bet.
just means a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm getting older, so like losing people makes me feel older, but then also really I don't have kids yet, so like realizing like what what would I pass down and to who? And it's kind of bleak because it's like, well, for now there's no one. And I'm the youngest in my family, so maybe my sister, if my sister has kids, or maybe if my mom outlives us all, which she very well may. But my songs sometimes feel like my kids, or my kids, and also my gift to the world. It's like, because it's
Yeah.
like, this will go on, hopefully, maybe in a YouTube video. I don't know if they take your YouTube account down when you die, but um so there is such power in like grandparents, and I can't imagine having your kiddo meet your grandpa, and getting to be in that moment. And I do love like hearing more about them from their friends and from the obituary. With just in May, we had my dad's celebration of life, and we met some of his friends, and they were like, Joe was always so fun, he was always joking around. And a lot of them were like talking about chasing rabbits, like, yeah, we'd go out and chase rabbits. And I didn't know what that meant, like, if is that code for something, or if did they really just go out in the fields and hunt rabbits, who knows. And so it was kind of lovely to see him as a friend to people, not just my father, like, um or like as a brother to my uncle Jerry, and a brother-in-law to my aunt Betty. And like to get to know your person through the eyes of these other people that might not have been a view of them that you saw, or that you got to know as closely as their kid or their grandkid. So there's lots of things to discover. It's
That's
never over.
and that's the thing. So this is the thing that's so crazy to think about, is that every person you've only got one sliver of a view of who that person is. They are somebody different to every single person that they know.
Yeah.
And it is really cool getting to talk to other people just to see how that puzzle gets put together of, okay, who this person was. We all knew so like with my grandfather, getting to talk about him, we all knew that he was this silly person, and we got to laugh about that, and that he was a very kind person. But getting to have like other little gaps filled in about the things he did and the person he was really interesting.
Yeah.
I will say too, so you worry about what you pass on. I think obviously your music is something you pass on. I do think though that it's more than just like a tangible thing. It is the memories you make with people. So that's the thing, I guess, that will live on with you. Just like we're talking now about people that we've lost, that we cared about, that meant something to us. I mean, as bleak as this sounds, at some point will be, hopefully a kind, positive memory for someone else that they get to pass on and talk
Yeah.
about.
Will be talked about on a podcast, but
I
in
don't
the
know.
future they'll be called
Gosh,
hologram casts or something.
I
I
like
don't
it.
know.
That's got to be the next evolution, right? Hologram podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows what the next evolution is? The times they are a changing.
Yeah. So the thing I heard recently, I work in kind of a tech field, and one of my peers I was talking to had read an article that they think the next thing will be the AI or altered reality, either through glasses or maybe even an implant in people's eyes. And
Whoa.
yeah, which is, I like the idea kind of being a little bit cyborg,
Yeah.
but I don't know how I feel about like an eye surgery to make that happen.
Yeah, I never even got LASIK, so I don't think I'm a good candidate for it.
Same.
I'm slow to technology. Even like earpods, I was like, "Are you sure wireless headphones? I prefer a tangly wire personally." Or
It's
like self-driving cars, I'm still like, "I'll drive my own car, thank you." But
I
I'm sure I'll eventually take advantage of that.
I'm with you on the self driving cars thing. I understand that it's probably better than people in driving. So I live in the Charlotte area of North Carolina. So I understand how bad drivers can be.
Mhm.
I still don't know if I just trust a robot to do that.
I know. I don't
Mm,
know. I don't know. I don't trust robots, but also I use them all the time, and they're
I
around me, aren't they? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if
I
I'm
still
looking
don't have.
around my office,
I know. I guess I don't have, like, my phone is about the most sophisticated technology I have. I have an air conditioning unit. I don't know. Maybe it's listening. It's been listening this whole time.
That could be the microwave listening in on you.
Yeah, my dad had a great sense of humor and definitely was remembered as, he was always so fun. He always has something to say, joking around, and um he was in theater when he was in college, and so I think I got a lot of my personality from him, like the desire to be on stage and the desire to tell jokes and make people laugh and express myself. And he definitely has some quotes, and there was a moment at his funeral where people shared their memories, and a lot of us said stuff and laughed, like, yeah, he did always say that. Or it was a sweet moment um to just remember that he always had a good sense of humor even when things were sad or bad or weird. So it was good that we were joking around, because that's what I think he would have wanted. And as far as sad things go, his funeral was perfect, and we had like
Really?
perfect weather, and it was just a really sweet thing. So as these things, we have to do them to say goodbye, and in an order of tradition. But I'm coming around to believe that they really matter. Like the
Yeah.
ceremony, and however your family does it, there is something important about saying goodbye and gathering together with family to do it. It's kind of powerful, because I'm not like the biggest family member. Like I don't keep in great touch with my extended family, and but to gather with them to like say goodbye to people was like, this feels almost like tribal. Like I feel rooted in, like, these are my people, and this is who raised me, and that's who helped me put on a band-aid when I was a kid and skinned my knee. And there's something like really, I don't know, guttural about it.
It's very communal. I mean,
Yeah.
as a species, I mean, we are communal beings. I mean, I think that sense of community, I I think we try to rationalize it away now, but I think it is very important to who we are as persons, right?
Yeah.
This idea, and the idea too of, even if it's people that you may not stay in the greatest touch with, because I'm the same way with a lot of my extended family because I live further away from them. But there is something about being around family, especially in a time like that. So there's this kind of shared collective grief and comfort there.
Yeah.
I think it is really important.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember when my grandma died, I reached out to a friend, and just saying, like, this is kind of hard. I feel shy. I feel like scared to go to the funeral, and everybody's going to be looking at me. And I don't want people to see me when I'm sad and this and that. And
Yeah,
he said something it could be very uncomfortable, but just lean into it, because there's a reason we've been doing it as a society for thousands of years. Like there's something to it, to the richness of the tradition, and like try to
yeah,
lean into it if you can. And it was really great advice, because it's like it's kind of one of those moments where you're like, I'm not special. Like this is happening to me, and it's, oh my gosh, my heart is breaking, but I'm not the first person who's lost someone, and I'm
yeah,
not the first person to say goodbye. So there's also like comfort in that, of like, we do this together because it's freaking hard. So like
yeah.
lean on each other. And I'm a pretty independent person, so that can be difficult for me to do. So there was like some crunchiness as I learned to open up. And I'm still not perfect at it, but there was just a learning to be open about feeling sad with other people, with your
Yeah.
family.
I I think that you're right though. I mean, learning that one of the best things you can do is learn that you're not that important. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're unimportant, but I think
No.
learning that, you know, there have been so many times like that, I or my wife, we've been scared about something, and one of the most comforting thoughts that I've been able to come up with is, we're not that important. If we're worried about a bad thing, what are the odds? One in a billion, what are the odds that they happen to us? We're not
Yeah.
that special.
Yeah.
And I take that as a positive view on things, is that if all these other people can live through this and get through this and still have some semblance of happiness and safety, surely we can too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. I think that makes, as a folk songwriter, I'm very self-centered and have to like really look in a lot. I don't have to, but I do. And so I've even talked about this in some of my songs of like, basically woe is me, and then oh wait, if I zoom out a little bit, the world doesn't revolve around me. So like making fun of myself for being so caught up in my own existence. And I believe in both, like as a human, and we know these things, right? We know don't worry because worrying doesn't help, but like I'm still going to worry. And like
Yeah.
death is intriguing and exciting. Like who knows what's going to happen? Oh my gosh, maybe it could be the next big adventure, but I'm still going to be terrified when
Same.
it's my turn to die. So
Yeah.
it's like, all we can do as humans is be silly little animals who feel everything all at once.
Yeah, I really think that's one of the best things you can do is just try to embrace a little bit of silliness and realize that this is all goofy anyway. Everything about existence is just weird and silly, and it's I know it's really cliche, but this idea of don't stress about life because you're never going to get out of it alive. It's a cliche, but I mean, there's something to be said for it too. I mean, I think just embrace the goofiness inherent to living and try to make the best of it while you can. You know,
Yeah.
and I mean that for the individual, but then also for the people around you. You know, and if you can make other people's lives, better just through silliness, through goofiness, there's something to that.
Yeah.
There's
That's
got
kind
to
of what
be.
I'm working on. That's what I'm working on. And I used to kind of think that I needed a reason, or like it shouldn't be too goofy, or what are you doing? Are you a musician or are you a goof maker? And as I've gotten older, it's like, no, we need to laugh. Things need to be irreverent and like unexpected, and like life's too, yeah, like what you said, life's too short to be normal and boring. And by boring, I mean, just not allowing yourself to be silly and
Have a laugh.
trying to be serious. Yeah.
One more time, thank you to Danielle for joining and sharing about her experiences with death and loss. If you haven't heard her music, you can find her on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. A lot of her music is available on YouTube as well and Spotify, or you can buy one of her albums. She's an incredibly talented singer songwriter, and you're going to hear some of that in just a moment. I am going to link to all of her channels in the show notes. You can also follow Our Last Meal on Twitter and Instagram at Our Last Meal Pod, or visit us at ourlastmeal.com. If you go there and if you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can reach out by clicking the Share Your Story button at the top of the page. And normally, this is where I would just end the show by telling you to take time to enjoy a meal with someone you love. But this week, I wanted to add on one more piece of advice, and that's just go enjoy being a silly little animal that feels everything all at once. And with that said, Danielle is going to play us out this week.
So I am again Danielle ate the sandwich, and this song is called This Peculiar Way, which is a song I wrote about my dad's passing and how I was learning to process my grief for him as my sister and I went through paperwork and signed death certificates and all these documents, as well as going through some of his things to find his passwords to his bank account so we could close it. And it was meticulous and sort of a nuisance, but doing those chores to settle out his death actually really made me feel closer to him. There was this astounding moment when we didn't know the security answers for one of his password accounts, and my sister guessed it, just like knowing things about him, like what was your first car, and she correctly guessed it just knowing things about him. And it was like, oh wow, how fun, we like guessed his password because we know these things enough about him. So in a larger sense, it's just about the unexpected times and ways that grief can rear its head, and how you never know when you're over it or when you're still working through it. So this is This Peculiar Way. Call it what you want to find a place to lay your head. Pull your blankets closer. Take your sweet time with it. But when you're under moonlight, when you're in the breeze, if you're stuck in traffic, that's when you'll finally feel this peculiar way to say goodbye. This peculiar way to say goodbye. I thought I made it over. I thought I crossed the bridge. But this paperwork says I'm not over it. So I learned your passwords and I felt your hand through the pencil markings of your sweet handwriting. This peculiar way we say goodbye. This peculiar way we say goodbye. This peculiar way we say goodbye. So I put one foot in front of the other. So I put one foot in front of the other. So I put one foot in front of the other. So I put one foot in front of the other. Hey, I'm saying goodbye. I'm saying goodbye. I'm saying goodbye. I'm saying goodbye. Call it what you want to. Tell yourself you've got a grip. I will take my sweet time with the little I have left.
Danielle, that was wonderful. Thank you so much.